right. It's recording now, I think. Yeah, it's recording now. And we have another one coming in. Welcome, Jonathan. So the agenda for today, it's up to you mostly. So the office hours are mostly to ask questions. So last week we had our first one, I think, from top of mind, we had like 6 or 7, about the same size of group we have today. And we discussed a few things. So last week we discussed versioning, usefulness of editing icons, backing up often. We also talked about the knowledge base that Francis and I are working on. So Francis is my partner in crime when it comes to building RoamStack. And well, the question was, okay, how can you provide a good onboarding experience? Because out of the box, Roam doesn't really have an onboarding experience, unfortunately. And we also talked a little bit about the Delta function to send things into the future, to our future selves. So that's a little bit advanced. So if you're a RoamStack member, you can find the recording in the community. You can watch it back. Today, again, I want to keep it as open as possible. So if you're stuck with anything, put it in the chat. I will start off with a little demo of how I do, highlights and notes organization in Roam. And I can also show you how I use it then, my highlights and my notes to, for example, create a newsletter or an article or any type of written piece. And Ziad, you put in the chat that you are an academic. How do you use, if I may ask, how do you use Roam? Is it to write or is it purely still research what you do? Oh, I think you're are you on mute? At least I cannot hear you. Is that just me?
All right,
I can hear you now. Yes, perfect.
I got my microphones mixed up, but so I'm still experimenting with that, and you know, I've sort of followed. I'm kind of a lurker with a lot of the Roam cult stuff, and I've noticed that there's a lot of sort of early career academics using Roam. I'm actually a mid-career academic, so I'm working on my 3rd book, for example, which is the primary use I'm putting Roam to. My last book I wrote in Google Docs, and I took notes in Evernote. And you know, it worked, but I have been fascinated with bi-directional linking and other features here, and you know, I've figured out some things, but have a series of questions about what's worked for other people and workflow and so forth. So that's
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know Francis is also working on an article about, is it your writing workflow, Francis? You're on mute.
Yes. Yeah. Well, various possibilities around there. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But I haven't started on a book yet, so.
Well, me neither. But I hope that. Well, I always like to see a book, especially nonfiction, as a series of logical sequence of essays almost. So if you that definitely is a good use case for Roam. I will show you Ziad, and I think it will be interesting also in the demo what I'm going to show today, how I take in an article and how I then write inline my comments on what I've read. So I take highlights and I will show you how I do that. And I will then, maybe if there's time, I can also show you, okay, how I turn that into a newsletter, which obviously is way more low level than an entire book, but maybe you can use it for inspiration. I'm going to click the chat away, so maybe Francis, you can you can keep an eye on the chat. Oh, so yeah, if you can put your question in the chat, or after the demo, if you just want to speak up and ask your question, maybe we can address it after about the daily notes. So let me get started with just a very short demo of how I structure my highlights and notes. So, and I realize now I should have created the diagram. Unfortunately, I didn't have time for that. But there are different stages when I read an article. So I normally first, and I will first write it down here so you get a sense of my process. So what I always do is save the article. Could be a book, so could also be reading on Kindle. I read the piece, could be a chapter, could be an article, and I highlight interesting passages, so or parts. And the way I read it, I don't want to get too deeply into, okay, how do you highlight, how do you take notes? That's a whole other topic. But what I generally do is I first skim an article or a chapter, so I get a sense of the structure. I read it, and then per section I make highlights. So if I just go weaponize, if I weaponize my highlighter and I go highlighting everything from the beginning, I end up highlighting way too much. And I will show you also an article in a bit that maybe I went a little bit overboard. But yeah, sometimes the article just contains so much good stuff. Then often also while I'm reading, I also annotate. So I use the annotation function, for example, Memex, what I use now, or Instapaper, or Kindle, any of the options. And then I either use Readwise, or I manually transfer the highlights and notes, transfer to Readwise, or directly to Roam. Or directly to Roam. So that is all the setup. So I don't do the heavy lifting in one go. I first read an article or a chapter, go through it with my highlighter, take notes as I see fit. Then I export it, but that can span days doing that. Once it's in Roam, then I start to structure it. So I'll take a article. So for example, this article I read recently about mental models. So I have a template. So the template is this, and I can pull it up with a short short code, which I've set up using text expander. So in this case, it would be this, and I get this template, which you see filled in. Is there anyone, maybe they can put it in the chat, is anyone completely not familiar with attributes? So if I say attributes in Roam, do you think, okay, I have no idea what it is? Please put it in the chat or just speak up. Let's see. I see nothing in the chat yet. So I assume everyone knows what an attribute is.
I do. I'm sorry. I can't type fast enough, so I was going to interrupt you. But I know how to use attributes, but I can never figure out why I would use them. And I wondered if you had a sense. I mean, I've seen the videos where they make tables, which seem like a trivial case. I'm curious if you have a sense of what they will be used for in the future.
Yeah. So now they act as links at this moment, and you can indeed create attribute tables. So the attribute tables is not.
Doing things together.
Wait, I hear someone is unmuted.
Now, because I really don't want to get back to that. I drove all over the world.
Is it? Am I the only one hearing that? There's I someone in the background. Well, I'm just going to mute everyone. All right. So attributes at the moment, it's a link, and you can create attribute tables. In the future, hopefully more will be possible. There's already a little bit more possible. So I'm going to show you something that's dangerous. So as you can see here, author, I have 241 linked references to author. So I can now do table, and I will put in the author attribute. So this is the function as it's called in Roam language, and then it takes an input, and that is an attribute. It takes an attribute as an input. So I simply write it as a link because, well, attribute essentially is a link. So now if I click outside of it, it's going to load. And all right, now you see so now you see attribute table. I realized that I haven't installed the sorting plugin. So there's also a sorting plugin created by David Vargas, and he has a website called roamjs.com. I've just put it in the chat. And you can download a plugin. If you don't know how to install a plugin, for instance, maybe you can link to the article on RoamStack, how to install a plugin. I think it's a public article on the blog. So for now, you can essentially just see only the stuff that's on the like all the attributes that are used on the same level. Those are visible in the attribute table. So I cannot change it now, I see. So I've just called the author attribute, as you can see here. Now if I click outside, it needs to load again. And you can see just in a nice table view, okay, the author, the associated tags. I have something called PS level, which stands for progressive summarization level, the source, and you can see some other stuff that I use. So you can see it's not very precise yet. It takes all the metadata, at least all the attributes that are on the same level. So the hope is that in the future it will become more useful. So that's just a side step. When it comes to metadata, there are different opinions. So some people like to nest it under something like they do metadata, and then they nest everything underneath. My experience is it makes it difficult to then use it the way I just use it now. So that way, like some data is hidden. It's not. It cannot look outside of this little part. So that's why I keep it like this, just in the root, as they call it. So you have blocks, and the block that is the least indented, that's the root. That makes sense. I don't want to become too technical. And then, so you saw how I created the template using text expander. And then I work from highlights to notes. So in this case, I essentially took the article because there were so many lists and things in it that I thought, okay, this is interesting. This is something I want to remember. So instead of using Instapaper or Memex to read it, I just had it side by side. So on the right hand side, I had the article open. On the left hand side, I had I had Roam open. And the cool thing about Mac is you can essentially on a web page just highlight something and drag it into Roam. So you don't even need to do copy paste if you don't want to. So I create these links. So these were subheadings from the article. This is a list. So as you can see, I link them up. So in the future, when I search for Jean Piaget, I will get this article up. So that's one of the useful features of the bidirectional linking. And obviously you can link up your notes as well, but I think, well, why wouldn't I also include links in the highlights, because it contains useful information. And in the future, if I look for thinking tools, for example, I get the same thing. So very handy. What I do next is so I take notes. In this particular case, I didn't take too many notes, but here you can see I take a note and I indent it under a highlight, and I prepend it with, again, a attribute note. And why I use note instead of a link? Well, I just like how it looks, and it's easy to type, just a double semicolon. And I even have, also for this, I have a shortcode set up. So that's it. So you can set up short codes or shortcuts using text expander. If I have a question, so when I'm reading something and I have a question, I use this short code. So semicolon, Q, semicolon, and then I get the question attribute. So why is this useful? Well, like I said before, a note is a link. So I can click on notes. That's how it originally came up here. And I see everything what I've noted down. Then you may think, oh yeah, okay, nice. Now you have like tagged a note, and now you can see it in your list of 100 notes. Well, I can also pull it in using a query. So that's why I have the notes section. Instead of manually transferring my notes, I just run a query. So if you're not familiar with queries, I will start writing one now. So it's slash, and I start, oh, someone tries to get in. So it's slash query, and I use the and query. And Francis, maybe you can, if you want, you can also link to the queries article, please. Because the query logic, it relies on Boolean logic. So if you're not familiar with Boolean logic, it might be useful to dive into it. I've written an article about it. So in this case, I want two conditions to be true. So I want to find all notes on this page. So I use the and query. And as you can see, it's already pre-filled. But what I simply do is I take the article name, put it in here, and then I say, and I want, on this page, I want all notes. And I just put in notes, and ta-da, here it is. So in this case, you see, oh, also the other query pops up because I've edited it twice. So I will delete it now. And you can see it pulls in all the notes. But the cool thing is I also have the context. So it's nested underneath a highlight. So I can simply click on the highlight and have the context. Well, for me, this is just beautiful. When I discovered this, before I was manually moving my notes and then linking back to the highlight that I noted on. Now that's not even necessary anymore. I can just pull them in using a query. Very simple. Just takes two inputs, the name of the page you want to search for all the notes, and then just the notes, the note link. And then from here, you can do anything with it. I like to, so for some books I have, for example, I go a little bit further. Let's see, what's that here? Yeah, so here sometimes I go really deep. I include zetels, so I write my own evergreen notes. But it all starts just with highlights, then notes, and as I'm reviewing my notes, I'm triggered to think about something else, and I create zetels. So let's see. yeah, so here I've written something and I tag it with, again, I tag it and I call it the seedling. So a seedling means, okay, it's still growing. And then I just pull in notes and block references. So it makes it real easy, because if I enter this page and I want to use something from this page, I could just open up something in the sidebar, and I can just start typing here, or I can just say, oh, this is an interesting note. Let's see, this is interesting. So I'm going to, let's see, does it work from here? Sometimes, yeah. Oh, sometimes it's not working as I want. Yeah. So now, for example, I've just referenced this block. So it makes it real easy, especially with queries. But if you have a set structure for how you organize knowledge, because Roam doesn't require any structure, but it pays so much to have structure, because you just know where to find stuff. I don't need to search for my notes. I know where to find my notes. And the advantage I have with prepending this with the note attribute is, okay, I will never use a highlight word for word, but a note, I can use it word for word, because those are my thoughts. So it also, especially in the case of writing for academia, I can kind of imagine with plagiarism that you don't want to quote people word for word or too much. So like incorporating these little tricks, it helps to distinguish between what's your own content and what's not. And as you can see here, even if I didn't have a note and I would just see this, just this bit in a query, it's still nested under highlights. So I've tagged it by indenting it under highlights. So everything here is indented under highlights. The highlight tag is somehow associated with this block. So I know it's a highlight. I know it's not my own words. So that's also a way to clarify, if that makes sense. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open up the floor for questions. And I'm going to have a look at the chat as well. Thank you for linking the articles, Francis.
So can I'll ask a question. I can talk faster maybe than I can type in the chat, but
yeah, sure.
So that was very useful. And you know, I've watched other people and have now explored for several months myself, sort of trying to make the daily notes kind of my home base for writing things, you know, with the sort of insight that one of the advantages of Roam is the activation energy, or the sort of mental energy it requires to sort of find where to put something, is one of the problems with other note-taking systems. And the nice thing about Roam is that you can just put it in the daily notes and so forth. But I've actually struggled a little bit, because as I try to then build up Zettles or evergreen notes or whatever you want to call them, I find that everything is in the linked references and nothing is in the page itself. And that makes it, so number one, it makes it disorganized. And number two, it makes it more difficult to use the right sidebar, right? There's more clicks and there's sort of more scrolling. And so I was curious if you could share some thoughts about how you do or don't use daily notes for, you know, fleeting thoughts that you have and so forth. I mean, you've talked about focusing on a specific article, you know, for a period of time. And I get that, but that's often not how some of the best ideas come into your head, right? I mean, they come in doing a variety of things where you may not really be in Roam. So yeah, say a little bit about that if you could.
Well, I think it's best if I show it. So I have a template every day. So this is today's template, and I write it using the template engine in Roam 42. So I've set, and I will show you how I've set it up in a bit. So I write colon, daily, colon. So that's how I distinguish between the templates. So I have two template sources. It's Text Expander and it's Roam 42. And if I write it that way, you can see, whoop, I have my whole day plan. So I have my quarter goals, and those are links. Then I have my daily checklist. So I need to remind myself to check things and to check the emails, because if I don't check them. I have my daily log. So as you can see here, I've been bad today. I didn't do my morning pages in Roam, but normally I would write something like morning pages or evening pages. Pages. And I tag my feeling and my energy level. So that's how I do it that way. I also have a template for interstitial journaling, like that. And it's all very related, but I just link it differently. So in Roam, the trick is to come up with your own structure and use links in indentation. That's the most important stuff. So now, for example, I can and just remove this. And in your case, so for example, if you have a random thought, you can just put it in the inbox. And well, if I go to inbox, you see I have 35 linked references. I use it mostly as a writing inbox. So stuff that either I need to dig deeper into, like I've already some notes, and I just put them in the inbox, and then it's obviously the link references. Alternatively, I can put it here as well. So I can do mentions of page or block, and then just put it in here, and then you get essentially the link references, as you can see here. So you can put it on the page. What you could also do is, I don't know, let's see, use a query again. So I have a page for Twitter or tweets. So I just started with this new tag, Twitter thread. Before I used to call it TweetStorm. See? And now I can say, for example, I want to see all tweet storms. So I'm going to use query again. Tweet storm. And I want to see all tweet storms that are in status draft. And I write status always in capital letters. Let's see. Yeah. So in this case, I only have one draft, one tweet in draft. So that's also a way how you can use it. I use it in a similar way with projects. For example, I have my active projects page, and I have planned projects, and I have inactive and on hold. And here you have all the linked references. But here I just essentially filter them. And again, it's just a query. It's projects, status active. That's all I do. It's not that sophisticated, but it helps you. It helps you structure stuff. And yeah, I don't know. Does this somehow answer your question? How you could use daily notes?
I think so, but just to follow up. So let's say you had a, let's say you have a evergreen note about some topic or another, and something else occurs to you that you wanted, that you don't really have time to sort of really integrate it into that evergreen note, but it's clearly related. Yeah. You go into Roam. Where are you gonna highlight? Are you going to put in the name of your evergreen note in your daily notes, and then put your new idea in, underneath that? Or are you going to go right to that page for that evergreen note and type it directly as a root on that page? Yeah, I would say both approaches are valid. And I use Command U the whole time, so that brings up the search bar. So in Windows, it's Control U. And then I can go to the evergreen note in question. Obviously, it can be distracting if you go to the evergreen note page. So what I would then do is essentially, and that's why I start my
my evergreen notes with the Zettel namespace. So I can just do Zettel and I have all my evergreen notes. And I don't know, for example, life is suffering from Buddhism. And then I just do this, hit return, and then indent it under. But it can also be a joy, whatever. I go to this page, and then I see all the linked references, and then essentially I can just pull them in here. I can just, from the linked references, I can just drag them into the Zettel. So that's how I would use it to minimize distraction.
Great. And one more question with what you just brought up, and then I'll quit hogging the question space. But is there a way to sort linked references when you start having a lot of them?
Yes. Wait, I see someone come in just 1 second. I need to pull up the participants. Yes, it's a plugin though. So as you can see here, normally you only have the filter. So if you have like the filter page, let's see, let's go to the note page. Welcome, Shauna, by the way. I'm going to mute you just to be sure. So if you want to speak, oh, okay, you're on mute, already muted. So as you can see here, this is the standard option filter. And what it gives you is, well, you can filter on the links that are in the blocks. So these are all links. David Vargas, so RoamJS.com, has a sort plugin. And I'll show you in a bit on what page you can set up that sort plugin. But now I can sort by page title descending, date ascending, descending, daily note. So have a look at David Vargas, and it's then you essentially have to create a page RoamJS, and it's all laid out in the article that we created. And then it's essentially just this. So you have a block like this. So you're calling the RoamJS function, and then underneath you nest. So it's one indentation. You nest a code block, as you can see here. And that's what it is. He also has the same functionality. So the same functionality as this for the attribute tables that I've just shown before. Also works really well. Let's see. So thank you for your questions, Siad. Let's see in the chat. So Jonathan asks, if we have been using tags instead of attributes, is it worth changing? In this moment, no. So you cannot create attribute tables, obviously, but then again, the usefulness of attribute tables is limited. So I've gone back and forth a little bit. Also with structure, it's grueling to go back. So I never recommend people going back and change everything if their system changes, because what if your system changes again? Then you have to go back through all of your notes to adjust them again. I don't know. Sounds like almost like a waste of time. And I have not talked about namespaces, but I've written about namespaces. So it's on, I don't know if it's on the blog. Otherwise, if you're a RoamStack member, it's at least I've written an article in the knowledge space about it. What else? Yeah, and then Palash says he mentions how to take smart notes, write notes in your own words. Yeah, that's absolutely very good practice. Although I'm an information hoarder and I like to keep the highlights as well. And I mean, in Roam, what's the harm? It's not like you cannot hide stuff. It's like I've shown just before. I I can pull up just only my notes and have the context, what inspired that note. So I think if not Nicholas Luhmann had digital tools in his day, he would have probably done the same. I think. I don't know. Maybe it's projection. Yeah, not being able to sort link references, pain in the ass. All right. So I went through all the questions in the chat. We've been 40 minutes on the way. Wow, time flies. Are there any other questions or remarks or anything that you discovered that you think, wow, why didn't I know this before? We're also here to share. I'm going to take a sip of water.
Well, I guess I'll ask another question. I mean, I did.
If you have questions, please ask them.
I haven't done any scripting or anything of my own. I mean, one thing, the other thing that differentiates me from at least some of the people I know who are real active with Roam is that my work is not in technology or information management, knowledge management, or anything like that. I mean, I'm a political sociologist, so some of the scripting and so forth, I know enough to be able to cut and paste and follow some directions, but I'm not writing it on my own. And so I've been using Applebaum's CSS material to sort of change the look of Roam. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do is be able to highlight with a different color or something the names of my zetels, but not other links. Now I name all my zetels with Z:, and then whatever the name is, similar to you. But is there any code snippet that can find that and highlight just those titles a particular color and not others?
Yeah, you can target using CSS. You can target tags. So and okay, my background is technical consultancy, but I'm not a programmer either. So I always like to joke, okay, I just know enough to be dangerous, but that's it. And Francis is the same way. So we're not programmers. That's also one of the reasons we started RoamStack, because we see materials and it's almost assumed you have programming language knowledge, or you know at least something when it comes to programming. But yeah, again, let me share my screen and go to the CSS page. So so you're talking about links, right? You want to color links a specific way. Is that the use case?
Yes, but I want to do some links, links that include, but not all of them. I can figure out how to do all of them.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the CSS page. I'm currently using the Mapleton's CSS code, and I've spiced it up with different fonts. But what she does is really nice. So this is so Mapleton's. It's by Maggie Appleton. She's a designer and programmer. Again, she's a programmer. But she also has something very neat in here. So she colors her tags. So for example, I could write, like, for example, this tag, and it should be colored somehow. Yeah, as you can see here, it's just turned this color. So I can take another tag. Let's see. Oh, yeah, evergreens, and it becomes another color. So it's this snippet of code. So do you have the CSS page set up on in your Roam database?
I do, and I use the same. I do the same thing, and I have modified it, and that works for tags, but it only works for the the name of one tag. And the problem is the titles of my Zettel pages all have different names, although they all start right with Z:.
I know what you mean, and I've seen it, and I'm just thinking of Rome Book Club now. So let me stop sharing and look for Rome Book Club.
Well,
Please
I
bear with
noticed
me.
that. I noticed that too, because I'm in that book club, and I noticed that it looked, I couldn't understand the code enough, but it looked to me that they were coloring the tag, and then they were saying, color anything that follows this tag with another color. That's how I interpreted it. But again, I'm not a programmer or a coder, so.
Yeah, well, I know just enough CSS, again, to be dangerous. Let's see what they did. So I think they did something like chat. They used chat. Was it chat? Yeah, so this is way more complex that I see now. How? I'm thinking of what they did here, because I've adapted it for the database that Francis and I use. So please bear with me. I'm trying to figure something out live now. So, oh, I see Palash mention something. But let's go to the CSS page that, okay. Okay, yeah. So it's quite a piece of code actually. So Francis and I use Roam as well to chat, to work, and then so I've created this now reply, and yeah, I see it now. What you mean? So this is not one link. These are two links. It's reply, and then this is the link. So yeah, I see your point now. But
sorry, I can explain a little bit. You can, so I think they also did something like starts with. So you can have an attribute equal to value, or you can have an attribute starts with a value. So that way you can say that, attribute, and then use that upward symbol and equal to, like the one I mentioned in the chat. So that would mean that it starts with Z colon. That would color all of your Z colon ones. So like that, I think they've done it for replies in the chat. If you like, you look at the Rome Book Club CSS, I'm also in the book club, so I was looking at that. So they have they have done it for the replies. So what they do is, like, if it starts with a tilde, then it will add scene in front of the reply.
Yeah,
like it will add the word scene in front of the reply. Yeah, you can search for that in the CSS also. I think they have it there.
It's
here,
there, right?
See? Yeah.
And they start with this instead of just
so that means that it starts with that particular word. Like,
all right,
that should work. You also have ends with, so in CSS you have all of these options. So.
Yeah, well, I think Rome will create many more CSS pros.
I actually, like, I'm a front end developer, so I can actually help out with this. Like, if you post on the Rome Slack group, I'm all about CSS. Like, I really like CSS. So this is something I remember off the top of my head. So yeah. So that is, so see, that is starts with, like, if it starts with C colon, then it will do something. So like that, you can just put Z colon, say, like that should work.
Yeah, I mean,
great, thank you.
Yeah, so like you said, it's in the Rome Slack, but who is hanging out in the Rome Slack and finding it? So I think this is an indication we should write like an article about, okay, how can you color your own tags in Rome using CSS, and have it maybe step-by-step instruction.
Maybe I'll do that, because I can see a lot of small CSS things which could be really helpful. Like, I have created some hacks like these, like, in the past also.
Okay.
Like, you can even create numberings and stuff. And so I can, if you want, I can help you out with that also. Like,
oh yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Are you are you a RoamStack member by any chance?
I'm not a member. I have subscribed to the free part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, whatever you can share, obviously, then we'll make sure that it gets public. So yeah, please.
I'll write something up and send it to you. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great. Yeah. So CSS, I generally take other people's skeletons and then I just hack it so it becomes more how I like it to be. So that's also how I learned just enough Python to do data science, or at least data analysis. Yeah, great. I love these interactions. We're coming up to 1 hour. We have about 10 minutes, just over 10 minutes left. So going to take another sip of water and let you think about a question or a comment. If there's none, also fine.
So I have a question. By the way, thank you so much for RoamStack. This has really changed my workflow. I am.
That's great to hear.
It's been huge. You and David Vargas and a few others who are putting out extensions. It's just been amazing. I am a PhD student, and part of my workflow, what I have been trying of late is not for books, but for articles, putting the entire article into Roam so then I can maintain the context from which I'm pulling a highlight, a quote, and then my own comments on it. As far as you're aware, do you know of any size constraints, limitations that, obviously my database grows rather quickly as a result of putting in article after article after article. I do have some concerns about performance. What do you guys know on the performance front as far as its speed and reliability?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If someone wants to jump in, but I can give my perspective, obviously. So the way Roam works is when you load the page, it loads in your entire database locally. So once it's loaded in, once it's in your cache of your browser, you're good to go. You can even disconnect from internet and still keep working. So everything is pulled locally. So that really depends on, okay, are you working on a really crappy machine with not a lot of RAM memory? It could impact because especially Chrome and Brave tend to be very resource hungry. I think, Firefox have also had some problems. Loading it, yeah, I have about 3,000 or 4,000 pages with content now. So those are pages, just a collection of blocks. But yeah, I've around those numbers. It works fine. Only loading takes about 10-15 seconds. So I know many people who just pull in the entire text, and I think it's probably better to have just the text in it than to include PDFs, because the PDF also always is overhead. So you don't do that. If it's just text, I wouldn't worry too much, because a megabyte of pure text, it's it's so much. It's a lot of text. And like my database, I think currently without the images, it's probably 6 or 7 megabytes. So it's almost nothing. It's really scalable, I think.
So I'm on the Believer plan, and I have toyed with the idea of doing a local graph to circumvent some of the performance concerns. I haven't done it yet, but I was curious as to whether a local graph might make sense. I do have a fair number of images, not PDFs, but screen captures mostly of things that I need to write up, and I never get back to writing them up. You know how that goes.
Yeah. So I'm not in the Believer plan, so I've never run a local graph. The way I understood it currently, it works the same way as if you just load your public data, or not your public, but your cloud database, and unplug it from the internet. Then essentially it works the same way. Only so what a local graph does, it puts all the data in the browser, but it sends nothing to Roam. but it's essentially, it still uses your cache of your browser. So the technology that's used at the moment, it's still the same. That might change in the future. For now, I would say, so you can try it out. So you can, what you can do is do a EDN backup and then import it and try it out. I don't expect that you would see many or much difference in performance, because again, it just works off the cache and it still works within the browser. So until they have some kind of local app or some kind of way to set up a database outside of the browser, it shouldn't matter too much.
So if the browser is the delimiting factor, I'm sorry, Palash. Which browser?
I think it might actually help. Like local graph might be actually faster because it won't load from the internet. It will load from your local cache. So that first time loading time would reduce. But the other performance issue you could have is if a single page is huge, like if a single page has a lot of content, then it might take a lot of time to load that page. And that's just like that can be solved by using maybe Safari in some ways, but even Safari will reach some limitations. Like Safari is generally faster in a Mac in general.
Okay, I don't have Mac, I have Windows.
So you can try Firefox for that. Like because any Chrome-based browser like Brave and Edge and Chromium, they will all have the same issues. They use a lot of memory.
Sandbox, right? It's because of the sandbox. They sandbox every tab, so it essentially runs. Yeah, so essentially, if you have 10 tabs open, you're running Chrome 10 times, essentially.
So is it possible? So I use the Roam app. Is it?
Oh, yeah.
But that loads up in a Chrome-based environment, does it not? Is there a way to load that up into a Firefox browser instead?
Yeah, so you use the install, what's it called? Like install locally or something? And so if you would do that from Firefox, it would install it from Firefox.
Okay.
And then it would use Chrome from Firefox.
Just a tiny thing that I like, since you mentioned you're not in the Roam Believers plan.
I am.
I think
she is.
even Ramses, like when you mentioned you're not in the Believers plan, like I think I tried it out once with a friend, and I think it just might work anyway. Like they don't have a check for it, so if you can just visit this link, the offline link. I mean, the offline databases just work. They don't have a check on top of it because if you put a Stripe check on top of offline database, it doesn't make much sense. Then it won't be offline. So technically, it's very difficult to do what they're trying to do. But yeah, I think because of that, they have a tiny bug inside, which I think they'll fix at some point. But you change the offline / any name, that will create a new offline database for you. Completely.
Yeah, it works for me. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so that should be like that's your offline database. You can test it out completely.
Oh, nice.
It's a bug. I think I reported it to them, I guess. Not a feature, definitely. Yeah.
That's great.
All right.
Yeah. One note though, I think, Palash, correct me if I'm wrong. Even if you use a local graph, it will still, if you upload an image, for example, it will still pull in the image from Firebase, right? It will still.
Yes. Yes, that is still a problem. Yes. So images are a problem, but otherwise everything works locally.
Yeah.
I was actually trying to create something in middle so that you can create backups of your local graphs. That's the biggest problem for me, because they're not backed up at all. If my browser dies or something, if something happens to my laptop, I don't have a backup at all. That is the reason I don't. You can back them
up using the Roam to Git.
Roam to Git works on online, right? So this is on your system only, on your computer only. All offline graphs are only on your computer. So Roam to Git will not work with this. Yeah.
Okay.
So you might want to install something on your computer which will run a server all the time, which can back it up automatically. But
I have cloud backup for everything else. So I assume that would scoop that up. I'm not inclined to do a local graph if I don't need to. I just am concerned about.
Yeah, I think right now it's not a great idea to do a local graph because that would be like it's not backed up, so it's dangerous.
It's a potential for tears.
Yeah,
Yeah. No.
definitely. Using it for
Um,
experiments. Like if you want to load a
Yeah.
lot of stuff somewhere, you can use it. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Amit, you're entering, but we're about to close the session. Unless you have a really good question for us that we can maybe answer. Otherwise, let's see. We oh, he or she went again away. Let's see. So today we discussed.
I do have one more-
sorry.
I'm sorry, I have one
Yeah,
more
Shanna.
question. I missed the first
Yes.
half hour of this. I had an overlapping meeting.
Yeah.
Is this recording going to be available for later viewing?
For members, yes. I don't know if are you a member?
I am.
Oh yeah, okay. I will post it. I will upload it to YouTube, and then I will post it in a community. Because Siad had a very good question, because he's also an academic, and he had a question about, okay, how do you use daily note? Oh well, maybe that you saw, and also we talked about attributes, daily note structure, how to use queries to pull up your notes or your comments to highlights, for example. So especially if you pull in the entire text of a paper and you do like inline commenting, I think the first half of the session will be of interest for you. So, and with that, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you.